Thanks to our friends at The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/ASYM for the top 10 stocks to buy right now. Virgin Galactic completed its first commercial space flight last week. And this is a huge step forward for the company because at the end of the day, if Virgin Galactic isn't able to generate revenue and ultimately profits, it's not a sustainable going concern as a company. And if we're going to make space travel more accessible to millions and millions of people, that's going to be something that needs to take place. This needs to be a going concern. So I thought this was a big step in the right direction. There's still a ton of questions to answer, and we'll get some of those answers as we get to the earnings report in a month or so. But right now, what I want to highlight is exactly what happened during the space flight and kind of how unremarkable it was. My name's Travis Hoyam. Thanks for watching Asymmetric Investing. Please subscribe here on YouTube for all my content and check out my newsletter, Asymmetric Investing, below. I actually have a new deep dive on Virgin Galactic, so I'll link to that in the show notes. If you're interested in this stock, I would recommend checking that out. And I want to start here just with the quick press release. This was on June 29th. You can see that this is the second successful space flight in 2 months. This was called Galactic 1. This is the first commercial flight, so they renamed the space flight, so this is number 1. And it carried 13 research payloads. And you can see here that there was a number of things that these astronauts that were doing. They're from the Italian Air Force and National Research Council of Italy. So this was a lot more than an entertainment flight or what we think of as the space tourism side of things. They were actually doing work. There was a number of different things that they were doing either in their seats or in the back of the spacecraft. So it was really interesting to see exactly what that looks like in operations, because management has talked about this before, that this will not only be a spacecraft that's going to be used for space tourism, but it's also going to be used for things like research. And so this was the first example of that. You can also see that Galactic 2 is going to be taking off likely in August. That's what the plan is. And then there's going to be monthly flights after that. Now, these early flights are likely going to be the people who reserve their flights for $250,000 per flight. So we're not going to see that $450,000 per seat revenue number quite yet. And also, Virgin Galactic has said that they're probably going to include one of their own staff in the back of each of these flights. So they're actually only going to be selling about 3 tickets. That's exactly what this flight was. There was only 3 people from the Italian group that went up there and then there's the 2 pilots and then 1 other Virgin Galactic crew member. So from a revenue and margin standpoint, this spacecraft that has 4 passengers in the back along with 2 pilots is not actually going to be what gets the company to sustainability. And it's ultimately really just a testing ground for the business model and for the experience. What is going to drive the company's profitability is eventually what they call the Delta class. That's what we're going to need to get a lot more information on. I have highlighted some of the economics of that in the past, which I can put a link to that above. And you can see that in theory, the Delta class should be a very profitable spacecraft, but it's not going to be in operation until at least 2026. And at that point, even if they build a couple per year, the company's not going to be operating cash flow positive until late in the decade at the very earliest, and potentially even early next decade. So there's a long road ahead. That's why Virgin Galactic has been selling stock, have a new $400 million shelf registration to sell even more stock. So financially and operationally, there's a long ways to go. But one of the things that I thought was interesting watching this flight live was how unremarkable it was, how it didn't get a ton of headlines that people were going to space on a commercial space flight, that operations just worked the way that they were supposed to. We didn't see anything major happen during the space flight. So that's another positive sign, because safety is the number 1 priority for Virgin Galactic, whether you're working there or whether you're an investor. And if we get to the point where flying to space is somewhat unremarkable, I think that means that this company has done what it intended to do by making space more accessible. And that's really the bullish upside for Virgin Galactic long term, is that this kind of just becomes a normal thing, an expensive trip, the equivalent to taking a private aircraft or renting a yacht. Maybe not something that is accessible to everyone, but there are hundreds of thousands of people that have the money to do those kinds of things. And maybe visiting space is going to be one of those for a measly $450,000 ticket. So I thought this was a great step in the right direction, but it's just that. It's just a step. Like I said, I've detailed more in the newsletter below, so you can see that deep dive. And I'll be following the steps that the company needs to take and more on the economics of the Delta class spacecraft, both here on YouTube and on Asymmetric Investing. So subscribe in both places. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you here next time.